Good morning, my name is Daigaku Rumme, and we are at the Confluence Zen Center in Maplewood, Missouri. And I'm here to show you the small garden we have next to our building. What you see here is a small strip of ground. It's about 7 feet wide and maybe 50 feet long. And we are growing flowers. And you'll see some herbs and vegetables mixed in. 2 ginger roots growing. Can you see them? These leaves, Mexican sunflowers. Cleon. And there's a bee on top of that zinnia. Oh, there he's going over there. He's enjoying the zinnias. Some marigolds here. Kale, and then at one time there was lettuce. I think there's a little bit of lettuce growing there still. And nasturtium, some lettuce growing back there. And this huge plant is horseradish. It takes 2 years for it to mature. So it'll be ready to dig this year. That you can shave off part of that root and replant it. And here we have a few beets left over. You can see they're sort of popping out of the ground there, ready to eat. And 2 cabbages. My wife is into herbs, and she's planted this calendula, also known as pot marigold, and she'll come and harvest these flowers and dry them to make a salve. Very good for skin. Very easy to grow as well. And back here you can see 2 bee balm blooms. Of a vegetable called komatsumo. In Japanese, it's related to Napa cabbage. Now they're just flowering away there. Called shiso in Japanese. You may know there's a red variety. This is a green variety, often served in Japan with sashimi, raw fish. And lastly, we have butternut squash. The vines are growing out, some flowers planted, marigold, cleon, here's some shasta, daisies. And you can see the blooms from the butternut squash right here. Here we are at my wife and mine home garden. And so I'd like to show you around. And first we're going to look at the herbs that Kathleen is growing. And here we have oregano, which is starting to flower. We have Tulsi basil, also known as holy basil, a fabulous medicinal herb. We have thyme, lots of thyme, you can see thyme, and a little bit of sage. And here we have Italian parsley, lemon balm. There's more Tulsi basil here. Some vine growing here. There's a little bit of yarrow. Oh no, this is lavender, excuse me, French lavender. And 1 celery plant. This is tarragon, French herb. And what else do we have here? We have rosemary. This fence is to keep the rabbits out. We have lots of tomatoes. And I learned how to garden in Japan, and this is one of the things I learned there, was to use bamboo to prop up the tomato plants. And you can see a variety of tomatoes, although these are mainly better boy. Here's a squash plant, a volunteer, which so far doesn't seem to be bothering anything, so it's living there. And here's a nasturtium plant, marigold. You can see the Rumme tomatoes here. There's sort of a mid-size orange, yellowish orange tomato. And here is basil, very good companion plant with tomatoes. I'll show you one tool that I learned to use when I lived in Japan. This is a hoe. I have an American style one which is triangular in shape, but as you can see this is rectangular. And this is used to create raised beds. And here in America, raised beds are usually formed with wood, at different heights, could even be as high as this. But this is a way of doing raised beds without wood. And I use this tool after I cultivate it with a shovel, turn it over. I'll come back and pull the earth that's in the pathway up like this. And then later I'll come by and pack it down, which gives it the shape and structure to withstand rain. And I've done all of these rows that way. Very refined. And with heavy rain, it gives a place for the rain to run off, as opposed to this being just a muddy field. This is also something I learned to do in Japan. This substance is wheat bran. I buy it in 50-pound bags, and I mix it with something called effective mechanisms, and I'd like to show you the bottle later on. I mix that, a preparation of this, with the wheat bran. You can see it's kind of like a sponge. I use this in two ways. I either mix it directly into the compost, which we have 2 containers over here. It helps to speed that composting process up. Or, before I till these rows, I mix it in as a soil additive, and it helps to make the soil more friable. It makes it softer. I take 3/4 of a cup of this. I mix it in a gallon of water with 3/4 of a cup of molasses. The molasses feeds the enzyme. And I let that mature for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I mix it with that wheat bran. And the last thing I'd show you is, I think if you're really going to be a gardener in the long run, it's good to keep a diary. It just helps you remember when you planted things, what worked out well, what didn't. Lately I've started to put yellow for things that worked well, a little bit of red for things I've got to maybe find a different date to plant them, or a different type of seed or whatever. Okay. This is a fig tree, which my wife Kathleen planted from a little potted plant about 3 years ago. And as you can see, it's become quite wide. Last year it grew up, 7 feet high. And of course, here in Missouri, we're really at a latitude where these fig trees might not survive the winter, so we bundled it up with burlap and plastic and so on. We thought it would be good. But what happened is that these branches, which reached up here, they died. And here's another one. Just break it off. And so we were told just to cut those off. And now it's poised for a comeback, and it'll come roaring back this summer.